Soundtech produces wireless headphones. During the most recent year, Soundtech produced and sold 7,000 pairs of headphones. Management believes that the denominator level of activity of 15,000 direct labor hours, or 7,500 pairs of headphones, represents 60% of the theoretical capacity and 80% of the practical capacity. The standard cost for a pair is shown below, which is right here. So calculate the total overhead costs at the following levels of activity: theoretical, practical, denominator, and actual. So to do that, first thing we need to do is we need to determine what our variable overhead is per direct labor hour. Now this is the cost component for 1 unit. But as we see, it takes 2 direct labor hours to make 1 unit. So at our driver of direct labor hours, we have a variable overhead cost of $6 per direct labor hour. So that's what we're going to use as our variable overhead cost. Now our driver is our direct labor hour. So now we have a 1-to-1 cost. There are 2 costs for each of these to determine our overall. It's going to be our total variable plus our fixed. Our fixed is never going to change. Our fixed will always be $150,000 per year. Despite, no matter how much we produce, we're always spending this $150,000. This would consist of things like our rent and our heat, where we're not going to get hotter the more we produce. We're just going to continue heating it to the right temperature or cooling it, paying the same rent, paying the same property taxes, etc. So our theoretical overhead is going to be the best that we could possibly hope for. Now we're going to use the denominator, the budgeted level of 15,000. That represents 60% of what we could accomplish. So if we wanted to know what the best we could possibly accomplish here, we would have to take our denominator level, 15,000, our budgeted level, and divide it by 60%. And that would get us 25,000 direct labor hours. That's the maximum we could possibly put through in our facility. 25,000 direct labor hours. $25,000 direct labor hours multiplied by the $6 variable overhead cost equals $150,000. The fixed overhead, which will be applied to all 4 of these scenarios, is going to be $150,000. So we have a total overhead of $300,000. Now that's a best case scenario. Our practical scenario would take our denominator, divide it by 0.8, because that's what our management believe is practical, and we get a total of $18,750. So again, now we did add up our two. We're going to add up our 2 overhead costs, our variable and our fixed, to get our new number. So here we have 18,750 direct labor hours times our $6 per direct labor hour, which equals 112,500, and we apply the same fix that we're going to apply to all of these to get 262,500. Now our denominator overhead, or our budgeted overhead, is going to be the 15,000 units. We're not going to multiply it by anything because we've already got what we need here. We'll multiply that by 6. We get 90,000. And we can add our fixed. So at our budgeted amount our overhead is going to be $240,000. And finally, what did we actually do? Well, we actually produced 7,000 pairs of headphones. Now, each one of these took us 2 hours. So 7,000 times 2, because we're working on direct labor hours. We're not working on units. So we have 14,000 direct labor hours. That was at $6 per direct labor hour. That gave us 84,000 in variable manufacturing overhead. We can apply that 150,000 that we applied all of our, that's our fixed, and we get 234,000. Now, assuming SoundTech can sell all the headphones it can produce for $200 per pair, calculate the opportunity loss of producing 7,000 pairs in the most recent year compared to the following capacity utilization alternatives. So we have our 4 alternatives again. Now let's just start by determining, this is the sale price. So what we really want to know is, what is our contribution margin? Because this contribution margin will be what actually is, that matters, because we're going to divide less $100 off each pair, which would come from $70 direct materials and $30 direct labor. We're not going to include our variable overhead because we've actually already included it here, so we'll leave that out. So our contribution margin, equals 200 minus 70 minus 30, which is $100. We can use that. So we can determine what is our gross profit and determine our operating income. So here's theoretical. I'm going to start with actual at the top. So our actual is going to be, we had 7,000 pairs of headphones. We can sell them all at a contribution margin of $100, which gives us 700,000. Of that 700,000, our actual overhead costs are 234,000. And we get a $466,000 profit at the end of it. But what is the difference had we been able to reach theoretical capacity? So our theoretical capacity said we could have had 25,000 direct labor hours. Now, it takes 2 direct labor hours, as we know, to produce 1 unit. So 25,000 direct labor hours is not 25,000 units. 25,000 direct labor hours produces 12,500 units. So 12,500 units times $100 is gross profit of $1,250,000. Our overhead in that scenario, we've already determined, is $300,000, which means we'd get a net income of $950,000. So if the factory or facility ran perfectly efficient, theoretically we can make up to $950,000. What is the opportunity loss? Meaning, what is the difference between this and this? Well, the opportunity loss by not running efficiently compared to what we actually did is $484,000. That's this number minus this number. What about the opportunity loss at a practical capacity? Again, we had 18,000 750 direct labor hours, but that needs to be divided by 2 to determine our units, which is 9,375. That's how many units that many direct labor hours could create. This is at practical, so this is achievable, but we really need to work hard at getting to this practical level. 93,750 units at a contribution margin of $100 per unit equals 937,500 minus our practical cost of 262,500. Equals $675,000. What is our operating loss on that? Well, 675,000 minus 466. So what we're leaving on the table by not operating practically, essentially, is going to be $209,000. Finally, at our budgeted capacity, our denominator capacity, we have 15,000 direct labor hours, which again does not mean that's how many units we sell. We need 2 for each unit, which is $7,500. Pardon me, units, 7,500 units at $100 means a gross profit of 750,000 less our here 234,000 brings us to 516,000 net income. Our operating loss would be this less this, which is $50,000. So we're leaving $50,000 on the table by not even hitting our budgeted amount. So our actual is not doing so good, needs to improve. Otherwise, we leave this at our budgeted level on the table, our opportunity loss, and this at an achievable practical capacity. We'll never hit this, but theoretically, we could get to this number, but this is what we're shooting for.